This is TWiT.
So it seems like 2018 is really like a tipping point so far of people giving up Facebook, investors sending letters to Apple saying, you have to fix the iPhone, make it less appealing to people. Just people seeing that our gadgets are taking more control over our lives than we want them to. So time well spent seems perfectly poised at this point. Tell us about the movement.
So you said it well. Time Well Spent is a movement that is working to reverse the digital attention crisis. Yep, right there, as we'll read it right away, and realign technology with humanity's best interests. We are in a system right now where a lot of the major companies that run our digital world run on advertising models, which inherently means that in order to do better next year than they did this year, they have to extract more human attention. And we have a finite amount of human attention that we get to live in our lives. And this model, not because of any individuals in the system or any, badly intentioned people in these companies, but just the model itself requires extracting as much of our attention as possible. And this industry has gotten fantastic at it, so much so to the point that we need to consider if this is how we want to live our lives. And Time Well Spent is about asking some of these big, hard questions of what can we do to reshape this industry? How can we help people take better control and have better relationships with their devices and technology? But first and foremost, how do we revise this industry from a systemic perspective so that it really is in service of humanity? Because why else would we want technology if it's not helping us?
So I grew up in the 80s. I'm old enough to remember that, MTV and, kids these days, they have such short attention spans. But this is something really different, like we're talking about the attention economy. And I read a quote, and I think it's attributed to a lot of different people, but just the more data there is, the more scarce a resource our attention is. And I mean, this, like you said, this whole economy is working on trying to get our attention, mostly for advertising. But Time Well Spent seems to imply that there's a way that we can get around this, that there's a way that to not have our attention be the bottom line for these companies. How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, and just to speak to one point that you mentioned there as well is, you talked about remembering a time when it was different or when attention spans weren't the same. And it's very easy to equate this problem with like, this is just like we used to gossip on the phone and this is just the next version of that. But things are really different this time for a couple of reasons. One is the 24/7 influence, is that no other media had 2 billion people 24/7 connected, checking. I think on average, we check our phones about 150 times per day. We didn't have this frequency of data and total access to devices in the past. There weren't 1,000 engineers on the other side of the screen. "This is great. You guys are just right on the parts of my website that we need you to be," as soon as I start talking about it. But so there were not 150 people or thousands of people on the other side of the screen who were updating it every day to make it more engaging. It wasn't able to integrate our social lives in the way that it does today, and it wasn't so deeply personalized. So it really is. It's a different problem than it has been in the past. We do believe that there's a way forward, and a lot of that really has to do with first and foremost separating profits from our attention. That is the biggest piece of this puzzle, because ultimately when, the goal of businesses that are advertising run tend not to be the same primary goal as its users. If your goal is to take as much of my time as possible, if that's how you make the most money, then you're not aligned with how I want to live my life. And so with other models, when we're paying to be not the product, but the customer, there are ways that we can structure some technology that actually cares for us in our lives. So Samsung and Apple and Microsoft are uniquely positioned right now to be able to help protect us from some of these companies that are trying to extract so much of our attention. It is in their best interest to create devices and create products that help us, that help people. And if something that we really want to demand is saying, hey, we're not satisfied with how this works today, we would like a different system, one that really helps me live my life, helps me live by my values. I think we just need to show that there's enough of us, that there's a market for it. And we're starting to see that happen in 2018, as you mentioned.